Welcome back to Downstairs and Dragons. This here is a preface for our new campaign, Lost and Finders. This is where I'm going to describe to you what the campaign is about, how I form the timeline, the map, and what the characters are looking for. I'll also talk about some of the rule changes that I make personally as a DM that you may question as you see our players follow those rules. So, let's get started talking about Lost and Finders. So, Lost and Finders is going to be taking the quests from Tales of the Yawning Portal and Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and we're pushing them all into one campaign. Now, those are Wizards of the Coast published quests. I mean, they've got quests from previous editions that have been translated into 5th edition, and I'm using them to build a campaign. The quests are not normally linked. You can take these single quests and put them in any campaign you see fit. There are suggestions in the book for where you can put these in, like the Dragonlance campaigns, the Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, and I am using the Forgotten Realms universe and world, but I'm not following the suggestions in the book. We've actually moved all the stories to a very specific part of Faerun. So let's actually go into that first. We're going to head over to our picture of the map. And this may or may not be as familiar to you. Most of my players have played Sword Coast, and I'm not as familiar with the Sword Coast as they are, so it didn't feel right to DM the Sword Coast. So we've gone east to this area above the Lake of Steam. And this is, actually I would say even closer to Calimsham, like a slightly northeast of Calimsham or just east of that desert. So you can find this on a map. I've got the names of the places there on the map. But you notice I've added some dots and some X's, and I'll explain what those are. So first of all of our players have exploitable backgrounds, which I've learned is my new favorite way to write a campaign. I used to write a campaign about a story that I had an idea for, but what I'm finding is way more fun, satisfying, just overall better for making memories with my friends, is I'm building a story that implements their character's backstory and where that is going to go. So at the end of this video, I'll talk about what each one is looking for without giving out too many spoilers. But I'm going to show you where they've come. Now you notice the orange dot in the middle of the map. That is Oakhurst. Oakhurst is the main town that you get your first quest. The first quest is the Sunless Citadel. You'll find that in Tales of the Yawning Portal's beginning. You can also find in old editions there's Spire of Nightfang Spire. That's the old version of this where you would take level 10 players and go up against the vampire in the temple. The newer version of Sunless Citadel takes players first level through 3rd level. Start in Oakhurst, they get their quest hooks, and then they go down into the Sunless Citadel, and then the Forgotten Grove. Now, all of this quest is described in our Prologue episode. It's up to you if you want to go watch that. It explains what our characters have gone through, what they fought, what items they've picked up along the way, and the Prologue also introduces the players that will be playing. So Oakhurst is kind of the center of our map and the center of where everything started and how they got together. It's very important. So that again is the orange dot in the center of the screen. You notice there's a black X next to Oakhurst, and that's supposed to be where the Sunless Citadel is, where their first dungeon was. But then the purple X's around the map, those are places that the players need to go to further the quest they started in Oakhurst. And you can again hear about that in our prologue. At the very end of the prologue, it will explain what it is that they're looking for and why they're journeying further together. Now, the red dot on the left side in Thornwood, that is a rock gnome city that we've implemented. It's where our rock gnome character comes from. We described that more in the first episode that you guys can see shortly after watching this one. Now, the yellow marker on the far right side, that is a wood elf city that another one of our characters has lived in for a long time. So that'll come up in future episodes. The green dot is just where one of our Outlander characters grew up. And if you're not familiar with that background, basically this character grew up outside of civilization, maybe had guardians or family or a community, but they live outside of a city in the woods, or in the desert, or whatever biome works best. But this is in Winterwood. Now, we have another character who's not from anywhere on the map, so you won't see that marker. I should talk about these woods and mountains that you see listed. Thornwood, Winterwood, Cloven Mountains, Onkwood, Lake of Steam, all of those have their own lore. You can go and look those locations up, but it's sparse, and I really prefer that. It gives me a little less of a box that I have to fit into, and it gives me some rumors I can work with and build off of. Now, so that means you can go look that stuff up, and there won't be any spoilers for my campaign. Let's see. You'll also notice, if you compare my map to another map, not only did I throw Oakhurst in there with its rubble pit to the east of it, I connected the two rivers. The Wintercloak River and the Thornwash River, I connected them because it just made more sense for travel in my campaign. And I also built that black dotted road that goes all the way from Ankapur to the black dot you see up at Deep Wash. So that's a fake road that I put in. It's just supposed to be a trail. It's not a paved road or a guarded road. And there's no kingdom. Oakhurst is its own establishment. There's no kingdom or empire that's guarding over this region. It's just individual cities. You'll also notice, if you look really close, there is a dotted path that goes from the orange dot to the red dot, and that's as far as our characters have gotten before we started filming the campaign. And I just wanted to show where they traveled from Oakhurst to the next location that you'll see in episode 1. So that's the map. Now, since we're talking about Forgotten Realms and Faerun, I'm going to talk about some timeline changes. I mean, some of the things I'm keeping from the timeline and some of the things that I'm changing. You should know that I am keeping the Spell Plague in the timeline. I'm not necessarily going to have it hit as heavy or be as permanent. I had it hit from, what was it, 1385 to 1395 is the Spell Plague. I had it be devastating, take out magic items, take out magic wielders, take out a lot of magic in the world. But now that it's been 150 years, magic is still being born in new children, and the Feywild is still flourishing with magic, and a lot of magic items have either returned to their normal state or there's just new items being made. Either way, I play very high magic campaigns. I give my players a lot of magic items, a lot of money to spend, and I have a lot of magic shops in towns. So that's why it's like I'm utilizing the Spell Plague for plot reasons, but I'm making the effects less lasting, as devastating as they were. So if you're not familiar with the Spell Plague, I recommend going and looking into it. You don't have to, we'll explain it well enough on camera, but it's an interesting thing to implement into our plot. So I said that this is taking place 150 years after the Spell Plague. Our gameplay year starts in 1535. So if you, for example, one of our characters, he comes out and says he's from Myth Draenor, or he was born there before its fall in 1487. And Myth Draenor's plot line we'll go into a little bit. So you're welcome to go look at that timeline. Just don't spoil it for my players who don't know. But, so we're playing in 1535, if that helps anyone understand. This is about, 46 years after Tyranny of Dragons. That's another Wizards of the Coast module that you can look into, Hoard of the Dragon Queen, Tyranny of Dragons. That occurs in 1489, I think. And I wanted to be later in the timeline for multiple reasons. I didn't want to interfere with the Dragon Cult storyline. And I also needed to be 1535 for character age reasons and when they encountered certain events in the past. So it might sound confusing. We'll get into it as you watch the campaign. But for 1535 is when you need to know that our year is. We are also following the calendar of Hearthos, so we'll talk about what day it is as the show goes on. That's the system where each month has 30 days in it, and 30 days equals 3 weeks because a week is 10 days long, or it's also called a 10-day. And you'll notice I have townsfolk celebrate holidays on that calendar, depending on the gods they worship. So if you care about the timeline, you don't have to worry about that. We're doing it for our own purposes. That's the timeline, that's the calendar. So let's make sure I got everything. Let's talk about differences that I make between the books and between rules and just how I do my campaign. First big rule change. So a lot of people actually don't follow this rule, but there's a rule that says you can only do 1 spell slot per round. Like if you're a spellcaster, you can do a 5th level spell slot and then everything else has to be a cantrip until your next turn. We don't play that way. I play a high magic campaign, so I just let people use all the spell slots they want as long as they have the actions to pay for it. And that being said, about battle and spellcasters, a big difference you'll notice between my campaign and the books is that I take a lot of fights out. We're a very roleplay heavy group. We prefer roleplay. We like the fighting and I love optimizing my characters and we like the monsters. But we just have a few less repetitive encounters. We won't fight the same monster over and over and over again. Even though it's a different terrain arrangement and different battle tactics, we still just don't do that. I trade all of those repetitive smaller monsters and I throw bigger monsters just one time. Like more bosses, essentially, is what I throw at my characters and my players. So notice less fights. And because of that, you could still go check out the books and see a lot of differences. I also may change some of the character names, the NPC names. I might change them from male to female or female to male depending on what voice I can do, because I'm not the most talented voice actress. Just doing this for fun, so sometimes it's easier for me to make a character female on the spot. But feel free to do whatever you want to do with your storytelling. From Tales of the Yawning Portal. Let's see. I think we've got almost everything covered, so I think it's time to go over our characters. Our players will introduce themselves. I wanted to just talk about something that the players couldn't announce during the prologue. I couldn't have them announcing their backstories in front of each other because that's spoilers. I want the players to have genuine reactions to hearing each other's backstories come out over time. So I'm not going to give you everything. You'll get that in the show. But I want to let you know kind of what the characters are working towards, so it makes sense why they're making certain decisions or asking certain questions. So, let's bring them up on camera. We have 4 characters, not including, NPCs and friends and things like that. The first one I'm going to talk about, his backstory is actually plain as day. Most of the players understand what his goals are. Phlebotomus is a rock gnome. He'll describe himself during the prologue. But he specifically is focused on that hat you see in the picture. And I didn't even draw it as big as it really should be. This hat was left for Phlebotomus by his master. And Phlebotomus made a mistake, thought that his master had just forgotten his hat. So Phlebotomus is out in the world trying to return his master the giant hat, when in reality the giant hat has been left for him. So it's just kind of like a funny motivation, but it's really great for me because it fits our Lost and Finders theme. He's lost his master and he's trying to find his master, and I get to leave a breadcrumb trail. It makes it really easy to force my characters to go from city to city and dungeon to dungeon looking for this NPC. It's really nice. I love it. Let's actually talk about someone who has a very similar set of goals. Quella is a wood elf ranger. She's also looking for someone. She was raised by a guardian. The guardian taught her how to be a ranger, taught her how to live in the woods, and that guardian disappeared. And so Quella is looking for that guardian. Same, I can leave a breadcrumb trail. They know what NPCs to ask and what to ask about. Really great for me. So Quella's lost her guardian and is trying to find her guardian. So those 2. let's go into my other characters. This one is a little interesting. This is Kieran. Kieran is an Eladrin, which is a Fey Elf, and he's a druid. And we really like the lighthearted backstories. This campaign in general is very lighthearted. I'm not really much of a grimdark person. So Kieran's first and most obvious goal is that he's looking for cakes. He was fed a delicious cake and now roams the world with his bees and his honey, trying to make delicious cakes or find delicious recipes in old dungeon kitchens or things like that. It's a really nice goal for him to have. It's not necessarily that I leave him a breadcrumb trail, but it's more like I just throw gifts at him that are kind of mundane but kind of fun and exciting. There is something else that Kieran has lost and is looking to find, but I really don't want to tell you because it will come out. I really trust that the player is going to introduce that backstory to you really well. And it's not what originally motivated him to start traveling, so it's not really pertinent for me to tell you now. But that's why he fits into the Lost and Finders theme. So let's go into our last character. Ixeldor is a half-elven paladin. And like I said, this is our character who's from Myth Draenor, and there's a background that the player found that's called Corvanther Refugee or something. So this whole character is built around being a Myth Draenor refugee. And because he still lives in a refugee settlement, is looking for a new home for either his family or his friends, or he's looking for a place for elvish culture people or half-elves to settle down. And that could be a village that would take him in, or a city, or maybe an old ruin, which is great because it gives him a reason to dungeon delve, which is kind of hard sometimes to build a character who's interested in dungeon delving for I guess less than greedy reasons or less cliche reasons, but that's okay if it's cliche. But anyway, that's Ixeldor. That's what Ixeldor has lost. He lost his home and he's trying to find it. So that's how all four of them fit into that theme and that title. I think I've covered everything that you need to know going into our campaign. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We'd love to get positive comments. We are just a bunch of nerds having fun. We are filming this for multiple reasons, whether it's our own bad memory and we just want to relive these moments, or if it's just fun to share and fun to do on camera because it holds us to a slightly higher standard than we would be off camera. But we put these videos up for everyone because we hope that you find enjoyment out of it as well. That's the whole point. To make a statement that anyone can play D&D, even if you're an amateur, even if you're just playing for fun, you're not a voice actor, you're not a professional gamer or anything like that. It's for everyone. So we hope you find enjoyment out of it. We hope that we bring something nice into your lives, but we'll always play D&D no matter what because it's how we kind of build our friendships. So thank you for joining us for all those moments and all the fun times. I hope you have fun playing D&D, hope you have fun watching, and we will see you next time in our basement because that's where we play D&D as per tradition.